everyone, to another episode of A Breath of Fresh Marketing. I'm your guest host, Charlie Milana, and today I'm here with Darla Jaye. She is a driven talk radio host and former singer. With humble beginnings as a choir singer, Darla went on to find a passion for talk radio and hosted her own show for 13 years. She's currently one of the hosts of My Legacy Recording, a business dedicated to keeping family history alive through the tradition of oral storytelling. So, Darla, thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
First of all, thank you, Charlie, for having me on the program on A Breath of Fresh Marketing. I am currently living in Houston. I've lived all over the country. I started singing and doing theater when I was a very small child. And that was what I thought I was going to end up doing. And by the time I turned 25, which was, of course, just a couple of years ago, I realized that I still wasn't making any money. I was waiting tables. I was doing community theater in Minneapolis, and that just wasn't enough. So trying to figure out what to do with my life. And I drove past a broadcasting school in Minneapolis, and I thought, I'm just going to go in and talk to them. And they, of course, said to me, well, if you have a really good voice and we could make you a big radio star, and all you have to do is give us thousands and thousands of dollars. So I went to school. Yeah. So I've pretty much been traveling all over the country. I guess I would call myself a very resilient person, because when you're in radio, sometimes it doesn't work out. A lot of times. Doesn't work out. You get let go. Not only do you have to lose your job, but you have to move to a new city with a new radio station, find a new place to live. And so I figure I'm pretty resilient.
Yeah. I mean, starting over in a bunch of different new cities. Yeah, you're resilient. That is the perfect word.
And before there was GPS. So I spent half of my life lost.
So you're currently in Houston, and you did work in Minneapolis, or, you kind of got your radio start in Minneapolis. So where are you from originally?
I grew up in Minneapolis. I grew up with 60 below wind chills, and my mother slapping a snowmobile suit on me, Vaseline on my face, and saying, go outside. So I went to high school and Brown Institute and did theater in Minneapolis until, like I said, I turned 25. So that was my home state. Hated the weather, but it's a great place to live.
Oh, well, that's good. So as I previously mentioned, you have a history of choir singing. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, when I was in first grade, there was a little choir in the grade school, and they asked me if I would sing a solo in front of the school. Mm-hmm. And I said yes. And then before it was going to happen, I was petrified and I didn't know what to do. And I said to my mom, I can't do this. I can't do this. And she said, just look at that clock back there. And once you start singing, you'll be fine. And she was right. And once I started singing, and then afterwards, when everybody applauded, I was like, well, this is something.
Yeah.
So I sang in choir in junior high school. I was in musical theater in junior high and in high school. I was in the choir in high school and in a madrigal group, which was 6 men, 6 women, and we performed all over the country. And then I also made Minnesota All-State Choir. There were 3 of us that went to Minnesota All-State Choir, and we were there for like 2 weeks, learning music, performing, and all of that. And then a year later, if you were in Minnesota All-State Choir, you could audition for something called America's Youth in Concert. And I don't think it's still around anymore. But they would take 3 kids from each state in the United States and for a choir, and the same thing for an orchestra. And so I sent a tape in and they selected me. And so the summer after I graduated high school, I left and went to Rider College in New Jersey for a week, learned all the music. There were kids from all over the United States. It was phenomenal. And then before we left to go to Europe, we went and sang at Carnegie Hall. And my grandmother my Nana lived in New Jersey. And so she and my uncle got to go to Carnegie Hall and see me sing on the stage there.
Oh,
I know. And I carved my name in the bathroom stall saying I would be back. I doubt it's still there. But and after we did the concert, we got on a plane and we flew to London. And so that it was a month-long trip.
Okay.
And every city that we went to, we performed in. So we performed in Royal Albert Hall in London. We performed in Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. I don't remember the places that we performed, but we also went to Innsbruck, Austria, Geneva, Switzerland, Venice, Florence, and Rome, Italy.
Wow.
Yeah, it was incredible.
So which country was your favorite?
I'm Italian, so I loved Italy. However, going to France, and I thought I was just going to be the coolest person there because I'd taken 2 years of French in high school. So I was trying out my really poor French and they were not amused.
Oh.
I think my favorite part, I got to sing a solo in Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. And that was, well, still one of the highlights of my life.
Wow.
It was a very strict tour. And they tried to keep the boys and the girls apart, which doesn't work very well when you're 18.
Right.
And if you got caught kissing or holding hands or doing something else, you got sent home on your own dime. So I waited till the last place to kiss somebody. Because we were leaving the next day and I thought, well, I made it all the way through.
Right. That's so cool. And it's just so interesting, like how your life can just take you, literally around the world. So now you were saying when you came back from the States after that, until you were about 25, like, and you did the switch to broadcasting and talk radio, like what was going to school for that like?
When I got back from Europe, I went to college in Iowa, Simpson College in Indianola, Iowa. I had a full music scholarship to sing, and it was opera, and I hated it. I was the one that liked to do the comedy and the fun songs. And so after a year, I quit. And I went back to Minneapolis, and that's when I started doing theater, waiting tables, which is so cliche, but it's true. I worked at a comedy theater in Minneapolis called Dudley Riggs' Brave New Workshop. And it was kind of like a second city from Chicago, or it's sort of like Saturday Night Live where you came up with your own sketches and you did live stuff in front of the audience, which is, for my radio career too, that was great training.
Right.
But I was in a show called Miss America and Her First Act. I was Miss America. I was the old queen, the bitter old queen who was giving up her title. And so the first half of the show was music about Minneapolis and stuff that happens there. And the second half was about Miss America. And so we did that show. We kept getting renewed. We did it for like 9 months. And I think I was making $70 a week doing Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and 2 shows on Sunday.
Oh my gosh.
I know. But I didn't care because I was having a blast.
Yeah.
So the director of that show said, I've got a perfect part for you in the next show that I'm writing. And I was all excited, and he gave it to somebody else. And because I was always very dramatic anyway, but I was very dramatic when that happened. I thought my life was over. I was never going to amount to anything. I felt betrayed. I lived in a 4th-story apartment. It was a 100-year-old building. And I was like, I'm just going to jump out the window. And then I thought, you're lucky, you break both legs, and then you wouldn't be able to do anything else. So it took me a while to get over it. And that's when I was trying to figure out, what am I going to do?
Right.
My parents wanted me to go back to college. I wanted to perform. And so radio, when I went by that school, I thought, maybe I can get my own show someday.
Right.
So I went to that school. I got an internship in Minneapolis, and I was doing their female voice commercials. And the commercial I was doing was for a fruit basket company. And there used to be a big mouthy star. Her name was Mae West, 100 years ago. And so I was doing it in Mae West voice, saying, if you like my bananas, you got to see my peaches. And some guy said, can I come in and watch? I said, sure. And after I got done, he said, how would you like to come work for me? And I said, where? He said, Lafayette, Indiana. And I go, where is that? He said, kind of in a cornfield. I'm like, oh, because I'm a city girl. Mm-hmm. And I was going to go there and work with the program director who also did the morning show, and they wanted to add me to the show. And so I bit the bullet. I said, I'll come.
Yeah.
And my brother and I and my cat, who was on Valium, got in this giant truck with my car behind it and drove to Indiana. And it was a cornfield. It was, when we got in my apartment, we opened the sliding doors and I said to my brother, what is that smell? He goes, I thought it was you. I said, I thought it was you. And there was a pig farm 2 blocks down. And if you've never smelled a pig farm,
oh, I have.
Oh my Lord, it is the worst smell ever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I kept my windows closed. So I was there for almost 2 years. And in the beginning, the guy that ran the show, he was my boss.
Okay.
Total jerk. Ugh. Complete ass. He really was. He was across from me and I used to do the news. And so I would do the newscast and then I would try to end with a kind of a funny story so people would know my personality. Right. And he'd stand across from me and he'd flip on the microphone and he'd say, so, you gonna F up this time? And he'd put his chin on his fist and stare at me while I was doing the news. And it was miserable. I was like, what have I done? Why am I here? He was such a bitter, mean man. And a new general manager came in. I think the station got sold, if I remember correctly. And he wanted to meet with everybody individually. And I thought, I have nothing to lose. I'd been there maybe 3 months. I wasn't making any money. I didn't know anybody. I was drinking red, white, and blue beer because it was $1.69 for a 6-pack. And I was miserable. So I told him everything that had gone on. And I said, he doesn't let anybody else go out in public. He doesn't let anybody else, do remotes and make money. He doesn't, he treats me like crap every single day. And he fired him. And he gave me the show.
No kidding.
Yeah. Which is, that was 1988.
Right.
And that was really unusual to have a woman do a morning show. And he said, and you could be the program director too. And I didn't know what I was. I'd been in radio 3 months. So it was a great learning experience. I got my next job by doing a charity event. It was a take on the dating game. I was the date. There were 3 guys on the other side that I couldn't see. And I asked them questions. And a guy had come down from Grand Rapids, Michigan to MC the show. And after it was over, he said, I work in Grand Rapids on a rock station. And I think you'd be really great there. Would you be interested? And I said, do you have room in your car? And so I gave him a tape. He brought it back to Grand Rapids. They liked it. They called me and said, can you come up for an audition? Has to be during the week. So I lied and said, I've got a family emergency. Mm-hmm. And I drove to Grand Rapids and I auditioned on the air for 3 days and I got the job. So I went back and I quit. And I was in Grand Rapids for 8 years on a huge morning show. It was Rick, Darla, and Scott. When I first got there, it was called the Q Zoo. We were enormously popular. Mm-hmm. Rick was brilliant, hilarious, really edgy, and an alcoholic. Mm. And so after 8 years, I just couldn't do it anymore. So I looked for a job on my own. The next place I went was Cleveland, Ohio. And got a 2-year contract. tons. I mean, for me in radio, a ton of money. And we went on the air. The day we went on the air, we found out the company was up for sale. 10 months later, the new owners come in. Nobody's talking to us. And we had a pretty good show. And nobody's talking to us. And so me being the big mouth that I am, I said on the air, you know, they've been here for 5 days. How come that program director hasn't come in and talked to us? And I said to the intern, go get him. And he came back and he was going, shaking his head. And I go, what do you mean no? So we got done with the show. We all got let go. They were like, here's your check. Bye-bye. I know. And I had never lost a job before. And I was panicked. I remember going out to the parking lot and going, what do I do now? And because it's not like you can, I didn't even think to try to go to another station there. I liked Cleveland. So I, again, started sending out tapes and finally got a job in San Francisco. And I got there on December 1st of 2000, I think. And the morning guy, the newswoman, the program director, the GM, the whole office went on Christmas break and left me alone on the air. Didn't tell me, you know, tone it down a little bit. This isn't a rock station. Women might get a little upset. And so I just did whatever I thought I should do.
You did what Darla does.
I did what Darla did. I did. And I thought I was funny. The people working with me thought I was funny, but it was a whole different thing than being on a rock station where you can get away with everything. Mm-hmm. When they got back from vacation, the program director called me in his office and he said, I have so many emails and phone calls about you. And I go, oh, that's great. He goes, no, it's not. They hate you. And I go, oh. And he sat there and played me all these voice messages. I can't believe you hired that woman. She is such an obnoxious. She's got a big mouth. She laughs loud. And I was like, what do you want me to do? I mean, you hired me for me. Mm-hmm. So for the next couple of months, they tried to change who I was. And ironically, the guy I was working with, his name was True Don Blue. And I used to listen to him in Minneapolis when I was a teenager. So he's a lot older than me. And I don't think he liked me getting some of the attention. But 2 months later, they let me go. And I'm in San Francisco, no money, had sold my belongings to move to San Francisco because it took forever to get the job. And at that point, I was like, I got to get out of radio. But what happened was I got a call from a program director in Detroit. He offered me the job and I said, here's the deal. My name has to be on the title. I have to like the guy that I'm on with. Half of the ideas have to be mine. And I need a contract by the end of this week. And we did. And I took the job and I went to Detroit, which is not the best place to live.
Right.
I took an apartment downtown because the station was downtown, but it had fence around it with barbed wire. And when you're driving to, I'd go to work at like 3:45 in the morning and you're driving down the main drag to the radio station. And I used to make the joke that when people drive, they would put their arm up on the steering wheel, lean way over. They called it the Detroit lean. That way, at that point, because it was really bad then, if the bullet came through, it would totally miss your head. Because
oh my goodness.
So 2 years later, they were going to flip to country and we were going to lose our jobs. And I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to have control over my own career. And I sent out tapes. I didn't have a talk tape. I contacted all these people. Men don't like to listen to women on the radio. And we already have one woman working here and women don't do talk shows. But one guy in Huntsville, Alabama, gave me a shot. The tape that I sent him was from a rock station. And the opening bit on it, there was 3 guys and me, and we were talking about how many dates before you have sex with somebody. And it was really funny until you sent it to the guy who owned the radio station in Huntsville, Alabama, who was a very good Christian. So I was really embarrassed when I met him. But he said to me, look, I might not agree with what you said, but I can hear talent. And so I went down there and auditioned for a week. I'd never done a show by myself. I'd never done a talk show, and I got it. So I moved to Huntsville. I was there 2 years. I sent a tape to Kansas City, to KMBZ, and the guy never called me. So I was sending out tapes. I wanted to move on. And I don't know, it was about 3 months later, new program director there. The only thing in the desk was my tape. So he put it in and he listened to it while he was setting up his office. And he called me and he said, would you like to come audition for a job? And I went there on Memorial Day of 2005. And I thought, nobody's going to be listening. I'm not going to get any calls. And I just went on the air and, you know, I don't even remember what I talked about, but for some reason I hit a nerve, which is good. And I had nonstop calls for 2 hours and I got the job.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's so interesting how you've been able to essentially, like, you know, we had talked about this in the beginning, you know, you moving and having to start over in so many different and very different, not even just areas, but like climates, you know, like the population differences between the different areas. That's fascinating.
It was, you know, I will say this, it's a difficult life moving around by yourself.
Yeah.
And trying to find a home where you can stay for a long time. But I don't regret any of that.
Right.
You
so
know,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, like, how did that segue into, you know, now working with My Legacy Recording? Like, is it just like something that you, I don't know, like.
Well, I'll tell you, I was on the air on KMBZ for 13 years, and they decided that I think they thought I was too old, which happens usually to the women. But I didn't know what I wanted to do with myself. My brother lived in Houston, and he said, hey, I've got a great idea. How about if you move to Houston, you probably have a better chance getting a job. And then you go get mom in Florida and you move her to Houston. And then you guys live together. And then, because she was slipping a little bit, and he said, it'll be great. So I promise you, I'm going to get to your question, but I have to tell you how it happened.
Right.
Again, sold all my stuff, moved down to Houston, lived with him for a little bit, kept calling my mom and saying, come on, you know, wouldn't it be great? You know, you wouldn't have to do all this stuff anymore. And I could take care of you and we could live together. Hopefully we won't kill each other. And so she finally said yes. So then I found a house. We put an offer in on it. She chickened out at 9 days in. You have 10 days. And she backed out. So I flew to Florida and I'm like trying to convince her again. And I'm noticing she's really kind of off. I mean, she's kind of freaking out about little things. And so I finally convinced her, came back and found a house. We bought it. I went to Florida again. I packed, she and my dad had lived there for 21 years. And I packed up her whole house, and I would pack 10 boxes, take it to her friend's house. And so she wouldn't see all the boxes. She could barely pack her suitcase. I mean, it was, when we got here, she was 85.
Okay.
And after we got here, I living with her, I knew something was wrong, and I talked her into going to a neurologist. and she had Alzheimer's.
Mm.
And she didn't believe it. So I said, let's go get a second opinion. So we went to a different doctor, and she agreed that she had Alzheimer's. And so I had to take her keys away. And she went downhill fairly rapidly. And I don't know if you know anything about taking care of dementia patients, but I couldn't leave her. I couldn't get a job. I couldn't leave her. She would try to leave the house. You know, that's your big fear. She fell and broke her knee. Then I got breast cancer. Then she got a lung disease. Then she got pneumonia. And so for the last, from 2019 until the end of 2020, oh, then you have COVID too. Mm-hmm. It was a rapid decline. Mm-hmm. It was the most difficult thing I have ever done in my life. Mm-hmm. Watching the person that you love the most disappear.
Yeah.
The first time she said to me, so how long have I known you? And they tell you, don't, say, well, that's not right. You're supposed to live in their world. And I go, well, how long do you think you've known me? She said, well, I think we either went to high school together. I'm like, I'm not that old. She said, or we worked together. But I'll tell you what, that takes your heart and just squeezes the life out of it.
I can imagine. I'm so sorry that you had to go through that.
So I couldn't do anything. We didn't leave the house. I didn't know anybody here. And when she died, I felt relief and I felt horrible. It was like I'd watched her die over the 3 years. Now her body was just gone too. Her mind was gone while she was alive. And I didn't know what to do with myself. I floundered. I said, all those things where I jumped back up and did something again. I didn't think I could do it. And my friend Dana, who I worked with on KMBZ, she does the afternoon show, called me, I think it was May, and said, hey, I'm doing these legacy interviews and I think you'd be really good at it. And I said, well, tell me about it. And she said she started a website. She talked about it on the air a little bit, and people started calling her, and she started doing these interviews, and it snowballed, and she got so busy that she couldn't do her show plus these interviews. So I went up there and I went on an interview with her. I did the interview, but she wanted me to see what it was like, and then she edited it.
Right.
And this woman had dementia, but we managed to get a lot of good stuff out of her. And the daughter was absolutely thrilled. So I've done several over the phone using an app. I'm trying to broaden my horizons here in Houston, going to networking things and passing out cards, and, I'm starting again.
Yeah.
But I think I like doing them because I've always been a very good interviewer, and I can get information out of people that they wouldn't tell anybody else.
Right.
And, the thing about these interviews, if it's your mom or your cousin or your grandparents or whoever it is, you never think about doing that until they die.
Yeah.
And to have that audio file of them telling their life story is precious. And all of them that I've done, everybody's been really, really happy. Really happy.
That's amazing.
Because I ask the questions, I record it, and then when I get back to my house, I edit me out of there. So it's just the person telling the story.
Right.
And so far, the last one that I just got done with, the daughter said to me, I laughed, I cried, and I found out stuff about my parents that I had no idea.
Yeah.
What they did when they first got married, where they grew up, how they met, how he asked her to marry him. What are your regrets in life? I try to get them to be very personal about it. some people are really matter of fact. Other people are very, very emotional. And the emotional ones, in my opinion, are always the best.
Mm-hmm. So if somebody wants to make a legacy recording or have their family member make one, how does that process work? Do they reach out to you or Dana? Like, how does that all work?
They can go through the web. It's mylegacyrecording.com.
Okay.
And go under host. And if you click on my picture, then it sends me an email.
Okay.
I also have a Facebook page that's Darla Jaye that I have in my profile, because I still have about 5,000 listeners from when I was in Kansas City. Mm-hmm. So I've been kind of mining that group of people to try to get this going. If they go there, they can send me a Facebook message. It's not private, and or an email, and it's JAYEDARLA@gmail.com. jdarla@gmail.com.
Nice. Okay, perfect. So when you are doing these recordings with people, like, what does helping record their life stories actually mean to you? I mean, I know that, with your mom, you probably wish that you had done that, with, I believe you call her Mama J, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I talked about my mother on every radio show in every city where I was. The listeners, my mom would call in. She was hilarious.
Yeah.
She was so funny and a little spitfire. But yeah, part of the reason why I got so excited about doing these is because I didn't do it with my dad. Mm-hmm. My dad fought in the Korean War. And every time I asked him about it, he wouldn't tell me. Mm-hmm. And there were so many things after he died in 2009 that I didn't know. And his brother and sister were already gone. Mm-hmm. And with my mom, after she died, a friend of hers sent me some pictures. I had no idea she was a cheerleader. I wish I could have talked to her about that because, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but you think you know everything, but you don't.
Yeah.
The first couple that I did, especially the woman with dementia. Mm-hmm. I was seeing my mom when I was interviewing her, and I wanted to get as much from her as I could for her daughters, because the longer her dementia goes on, the worse she's going to be, and she's not going to remember anything. The first thing to go is the here and now. That it's kind of like they regress back to their childhood. Mm-hmm. And when I was interviewing her, she kept going back to being in the hayloft and jumping out of the hayloft to scare her sister. And she must have told me that 15 times during the interview. And I was like, I wish I would have done this with my mom. And it makes me feel good that people will have something that they can hand down through generations. Mm-hmm. So people know their grandmother or their aunt or uncle.
Yeah, no, I fully support that idea. And I didn't honestly know that it was a thing until we had invited you to become a guest on the show, and it's now something that I'm kind of thinking, maybe I want to do this with my mom.
Yeah. The other thing that I was thinking about, and I have to get out and, I had breast cancer and I didn't have insurance. So I had to go through the county. Mm-hmm. And thank God that I could do that. But, there was a point where I was worried if I was going to make it or not.
Right.
And I thought, another group, it would be difficult that I could try to talk to is people who have cancer.
Right.
If you want to, that's any age group. And some people have a hard time writing stuff down. There's memory books where you can write a story, but not everybody's good at that. It's much easier to just talk and let me do the work for you. Mm-hmm. You tell the story, I'll make it sound good.
So do you have a set of questions that you are standard for when you talk to people? Do you tailor them?
I tailor them. There's a couple that I start with. I ask them, to say their name, where they were born, what year. Then I ask them about their parents, their mother, their father. What do you remember about your mother? What was the best thing? What was the worst thing? And before I do the interview, I have whoever ordered it, usually it's a daughter or son, send me a bunch of life things and stuff they want me to talk to them about.
Okay.
So, they give me the brothers and sisters' names, the father's name or the mother, depending on who you're talking to. And as we go on, and this from doing interviews, you think of others when they're talking. I'm thinking, oh yeah, I want to ask her more about that. So I generally have maybe 10 questions plus the information from the family. Plus I just listen really, really carefully so that I can, if I think they need to expand on something, I can get it.
Yeah, you can do like follow-up questions and
right.
Kind of make it more conversational than like a strict interview.
Right.
Okay. So one thing I've been dying to ask you through this entire thing, you've mentioned a couple of times that you are a breast cancer survivor. I cannot congratulate you enough. You are clearly strong and resilient, but you were in a viral video because you broke the cancer-free bell out of just the sheer joy and excitement. Please tell me about this video.
I'll tell you something. If you're going to end your cancer journey, this is the way to do it.
Exactly.
I was so excited. And they brought me around and the bell was on the wall and it had the clanger thing. I don't think that's what it's called, but
technical terms.
He said, go ahead. And I'm like, yes, 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 yes. And it broke off in my hand and flew across the room. And I was like laughing and saying, oh my God, I broke the bell. And I picked it up and I was trying to figure out how to fix it. Well, they were videotaping it. They put it on their Facebook page. Then all the TV stations in Houston got a hold of me. And then Good Morning America, the Today Show, Fox News, it ended up being seen by 40 million people.
Wow.
40 million. I did interviews with papers in New York and all this stuff about, my cancer journey. And every time I see it, I just laugh. And it just brings me so much joy because it was such a difficult battle.
Yeah. Well,
when your tribe lives somewhere else and you're also taking care of your mom, and then you find out you have cancer and you got to have surgery and chemo and radiation, plus take care of your mom. I mean, I was overwhelmed with joy at the end of it.
Mm-hmm. I can only imagine. So speaking of joy, you've also recently adopted a dog. Please tell me about Chewy.
Well, he's in his crate right now because otherwise he'd be jumping up in front of the camera. I've never had a dog before.
Okay.
And I was going to get a cat. And I started getting these emails from adoptapet.com and I would look at them and then I'd look at the dogs and I'd say, oh, that one's cute. No, that. And Chewy, I think he's a Yorkie poo.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got poodle in him. He's got the ears that stick straight up. And his picture I just popped it up one day and his face, I was like, oh my God, I have to have that dog. And I got a hold of the rescue place. And she said, well, I have a lot of people that are interested. And I said, look, I'm single. My mother just passed away. I'm by myself. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I know that this dog and I can help each other. They had found him on a country road, about 75 miles south of Houston. And he was all matted. And I don't know if he's ever had a family before, but she decided that I could have him. And I drove down to her rescue place in a little town, southern Texas, and I got him. And it has been, I have never laughed so much in my life. I mean, for a long, long time. He's very funny.
Mm-hmm.
He's very obnoxious. He likes to chew everything.
Hence the name Chewy.
Well, they did it because of Chewbacca, because he kind of looked like Chewbacca.
Oh, okay.
But I'm telling you, and I thought, should I keep the name? He has destroyed more stuff in my house. The other day, I came out from working in my office, and he had pulled one of my bras off. It was drying on a drying rack, and he was chewing chewing the underwire out in the living room. Of course, you have to take a picture first.
Obviously.
I love him. I love him. He has brought me a ton of joy. I'm exercising. I mean, we go for 40-minute walks every morning. And it was, I like to call these things God things. Mm. And I think my mother was behind it too, because she used to say to me, how come you never smile anymore? How come you never laugh anymore? And now I am, and I'm sure she knows it.
And you're doing it in abundance, it sounds like.
I am.
So where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Like, do you plan on continuing with My Legacy Recording? Or, I mean, your life has just gone in so many different directions.
I know. I'm thinking that I'm going to do this now and see how it goes. See if I can build, a fairly good business out of it. It goes through Dana's company. She gets a cut, and then I get the rest. And I used to love public speaking. So I was thinking I would go talk to the Alzheimer's Association and see if they need somebody for when they're trying to raise money for the Alzheimer's Association, if they need a speaker, and I could tell the story about my mom. Adventures with Mama J is what I called it. I also would like to help with breast cancer, and in particular, the county hospital that helped me. All the doctors come from MD Anderson that work they're like fellows that are getting their fellowship there. So, I mean, I got incredible care, and so I'd like to help them too. And at some point, maybe next year, I kind of want to move to Florida.
Yeah.
God's waiting room. Because the older I get, I thought, I live in a really nice neighborhood. I have a great house. But it's kind of isolating. And I thought I might move to a condo community where there's a bunch of stuff going on and a bunch of people around that I can do stuff with. Because if this legacy thing takes off, I could do that anywhere.
Exactly.
Couldn't think of it on my own. I was like, oh my God, what can I do with myself? I don't want to, I have to go be a greeter at Walmart. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but I wanted to use my talent. And so I think this is a good way to do it. It makes me feel good to do it. Pretty passionate about it already. So I think I'll be doing it for quite a while.
I love that. So who would you say your biggest supporters are?
My mom was my best friend. My mom told me that I could be anything I wanted, that when people were mean to me, obviously they were jealous. She built me up into the confident woman that I became. I miss that. I miss, being able to, I want to call her and say, here's what happened today. My brother lives 3 miles from me, and he's been a really good support. I still have lots of friends in Kansas City and other places that I've lived that I talk to. And I just joined a women's business networking group, hoping to get a community out of that and to be able to network my business too.
Yeah. So while we're starting to wrap things up, are there any final thoughts that you have for our listeners? Any, information about if they're interested in My Legacy Recordings, or if they're interested in booking you as a speaker at any of their events? Because it sounds like you are interested and open to that. Any final thoughts?
I think life is tough. I mean, and the older you get, the tougher it gets. And my just recommendation for people is to try to find the silver lining in every crappy thing that happens to you. It's hard. But I believe that, everything happens for a reason. And if you want to get a hold of me, again, it's mylegacyrecording.com, or you can send me an email, jdarla, JAYEDARLA @gmail.com. And we can it doesn't matter where you live, I can set it up over the phone. I'm better at the interviewing than I am at the editing, but I'm getting there. That's the long, involved, and drawn out part. I just, when you feel like things are not going to go your way, don't give up, because something good is around the corner.
I love that. That's wonderful, perfect parting wisdom from such a resilient, charismatic woman. So thank you so much for joining the show today. It has been an absolute pleasure having you. I do wish you the best, and I think that what you're doing is really great. And I am truly excited to see more. Thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of A Breath of Fresh Marketing. Be well.